As the evidence mounts against President Trump and another impeachment witness is testifying tomorrow over the weekend, there are these new reports that Trump's own aides admit they are losing the current impeachment debate. And it's not just with the public. One Republican senator complaining about the way Donald Trump is speaking and freestyling his own defense, saying, quote, does he need to be so unhinged? He says the dumbest things and doesn't know when to, quote, just shut up. I am joined, as promised, by the return of Bill Kristol. Good evening, sir.
And good evening again.
We look at this is a Republican senator telling the president to shut up on impeachment. It seems to be a concern that they would rather he said nothing than defend impeachment the way he has been.
Yeah, though even that, I think, is a Republican senator sort of wishing to pretend that if only Trump didn't say stupid things, then they'd be off the hook of having to decide whether he did impeachable deeds. It's no longer about Trump being obnoxious and offensive and even trying to launch other things that might well be dangerous, like this investigation of justice. The House Democrats are compiling a record, a factual record. I think they seem to have done a very good job in these private depositions, with Republicans there, obviously, with Republican and Democratic counsel, totally in accord with the rules. I think they'll do that, and they're on a fast track. They're going to finish, I think, the private depositions and testimony within a week or two, go to maybe a week of open hearings. I do think we will have impeachment on the floor of the House in early mid-December. And I think
And you think he'll be impeached?
I do, and I think the White House, I think likely, with maybe some Republican votes, certainly a better chance of a dozen or so Republican House votes than one would have thought a month ago. And the White House is panicking. That's what's happening. That's why Trump is lashing out at everyone in truly, as the senator says, unhinged ways. That's why Lindsey Graham is floating this ridiculous resolution telling the House how to do its business and giving Republican senators something they can kind of be for, which is, we don't like the House Democrats' procedures. What does that have to do with anything? That doesn't get them off.
Right, over procedures, Bill. I want to throw up some of the Internet's take on this, because sometimes it's the flash examples. This is what they call, a storytelling by meme. The impeachment hearing should be public. That's them saying that about Republicans. Democrats, this is going around the Internet, respond. Their depositions are always private. From there, you get the meme response saying, I'm a congressman, I should be allowed in, followed by, you're on a relevant committee, you are allowed in, and it goes on from there. I know, but my party wrote these rules. I'm making a scene to pander to my base. As you know, Bill, in politics, sometimes what you get hit with on SNL can burn in a perception. Do you think they're erring by focusing on process?
Well, I think it's the only thing they can focus on, because most of them, or even the reasonable Republicans who might defect, don't want to defend Trump on substance. And even his true loyalists don't really want to defend him on substance. I mean, that's why they're storming the hearing room and stuff, which has its own terrible effects in terms of our democracy and how much of a banana republic we look like we're becoming. But I come back to the fact the White House and Trump supporters are in a pretty serious panic, I've got to say. And when you talk privately to Republicans on the Hill, Republican senators, they'll sign on to Lindsey Graham's resolution because it kind of takes them off the hook for a while, and they're criticizing the Democrats. But a lot of them are privately saying, we need to see the facts. But we're not saying right now that it's inconceivable that we would vote to convict Donald Trump.
That's quite a statement, and it's coming from Bill Kristol, who knows his way around conservative Washington. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ari.
Appreciate it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.